Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today virtually for the launch of our 2022 Hays Asia Salary Guide. We've recently launched our annual Hays Asia Salary Guide, which explores trends in recruitment, industry-specific overviews, and salary insights, as well as recommendations for employers and employees as we navigate a new world of work. In today's presentation, we will place the lens on Japan, of course, and see how we stack up against 4 other key markets that Hays operate in. And those key markets are China, Hong Kong, SAR, Malaysia, and Singapore. So let me just introduce myself for those that haven't had a chance to join one of our webinars before. My name is Grant Torrens. I am the Managing Director for Hays Japan. Today, I will be your host and moderator for this webinar. I have more than 16 years experience in recruitment, all with Hays. I began my career with Hays back in 2006 in our London office, and I was responsible for recruiting accountancy and finance positions for the London banking sector. In 2010, I moved out to Hays in Singapore, where I began my role in management. And in 2019, I assumed responsibility for the Singapore operations. In January 2021, just over a year ago, I began my role in Japan as the Managing Director. So before we dive right into the survey findings, I'd just like to begin a quick introduction to who we are here at Hays and what in fact it is that we do. We are one of the leading specialist recruitment companies globally, and we are currently the market leader in both the UK as well as the Asia Pacific region. To date, we employ over 12,000 staff worldwide, and we operate out of 254 offices across 32 different markets or 32 different countries. We also recruit across 20 different specializations. In Asia, we continue to strengthen our position in 5 markets. As I mentioned before, that's China, Hong Kong, SAR, Japan, Malaysia, and Singapore. Additionally, we are the official recruitment partner for the City Football Group, and we are the most followed recruitment and staffing agency on LinkedIn with over 5 million followers, and that is growing every day. We do post industry news as well as tips and advice and homegrown content quite regularly. So if you think this might be useful to you, I do urge you just to grab your phones right now and scan that QR code there on the screen, and that will take you through to our LinkedIn page. You can very easily just follow us, and that will give you access to all the great content that we share to our 5 million plus followers each and every day. Okay, so here's a quick look at the agenda for today. So in this webinar, we're going to share with you, well, I'm going to share with you the findings from this year's salary guide, which includes a market overview of recruitment trends in Asia, industry-specific insights, and our recommendations will follow at the end for both employers and employees as they navigate the world of work in 2022. Lastly, we'll be ending the webinar with a Q&A session, so please feel free to submit your questions through the questions panel on your right anytime during this webinar. At the end of the webinar, I will bring up the questions that you ask, and we'll do our very best to get through as many of them as we possibly can in the time frame that allows us to. Of course, if we're not able to get to your question, we will obviously keep that question with us, and we will get someone to respond to it and drop you an email sometime over the next few days. This webinar is also going to be recorded, and the link to the recording will be emailed out to all of you along with a soft copy of the actual 2022 Hays Asia Salary Guide. Okay, so as mentioned, the insights we will share today is based on the annual salary guide for 2022. It's a definitive snapshot of salaries for positions across industries in Asia. This year is actually the 15th year that we've created editions of the salary guide. So it includes overviews of salaries, recruitment trends, business outlooks, and job seeker and employer sentiments as well. The insights and the trends are based on a survey of responses of almost 10,000 people. As you can see on the screen there, 9,500 professionals across the Asia region responded to our survey, and that was across those 5 key operating markets that I mentioned to you earlier before. 36% of all respondents on the survey this year indicated that they were hiring managers. All right, so let's kick off some findings for Asia. We're just going to kind of zoom out to begin with, take a look at Asia as a whole before we then zero in or focus in on Japan in a moment. But let's take a look at Asia. So overall, the good news is, and I'm sure you would agree with this sentiment so far after the first quarter, that 2022 looks to be a more promising year for businesses following the economic slowdown as the region battled with COVID-19 over the last couple of years. This is evident by how 69% of employers expect business activity to actually increase in 2022. And that was compared to just 55% that indicated the same response last year. There's also a significant reduction in hiring freezes this year across Asia. 79% of respondents do not expect a hiring freeze to be implemented this year. With more organizations returning to business as usual, we can expect a surge in hiring activity, of course. This is evidenced by the jump in employers planning to increase their permanent staff levels this year. That's 52% of respondents indicated that, against 30% this time last year. More employers are planning to increase salaries in 2022. So this is a clear sign that we are on the road to recovery, not quite out of the woods completely, but certainly back on a smoother path to the future. And certainly in some markets in Asia, we are in fact in growth mode. 29% of employers across Asia said that salaries were lowered or unchanged in the last 12 months, compared to the 19% who projected the same in 2022 or for 2022. Compared to other markets, more employers in China and Malaysia are planning for higher increments of between 3 to 6%. Hong Kong, Japan, and Singapore will probably see their increments peak at about 3%. So not quite at the China, or certainly not at the China level, and not quite at the Malaysia level either, around about 3%. The second trend that we observed is that the salaries is still the strongest motivator for people who are looking for new jobs, or those that choose, in fact, to remain at their current job. 73% of respondents across Asia reflected this when we asked them what is the top reason they would look for a new job. And that's actually against 58% who indicated the same response last year. This is likely due to stagnated salary growth as organizations' budgets tightened during the course of the pandemic, or the worst of the pandemic. Other motivators also remain unchanged from previous years, and they mostly relate to career progression as well as other benefits. If we look at why people choose to stay in their jobs, the motivators are more aspirational. So these motivators include a better work-life balance, work flexibility. This is a real key one, as you know, as the advancement of flexible working technology really took hold during the pandemic. And finally, an alignment of values and culture in the organization as compared to their own aspirations. Talent attraction and retention strategies are of utmost importance given the skill shortage that does continue to persist in Asia. 40% of organizations did report a lack of confidence when it came to hiring skilled talent in 2022. That's quite a lot. 40% of organizations reported that lack of confidence in hiring skilled talent. So this is quite concerning, obviously, given businesses are quite aggressive right now in their hiring plans as they focus on recovery and growth, certainly over the coming months, if not the coming year. When we asked, why do you think these skills shortages persist, the consensus that we got back from survey responses was that higher compensation is being offered by other companies, so competition and demand there, as well as the lack of learning and development opportunities to upskill current employees. So together with the findings on candidate motivators, it's pretty clear that employers do need to continue to try and meet candidates' expectations when it comes to pay packages, but also provide the right growth and development opportunities to ensure that they not only attract the best talent in the market, but indeed retain the talent that they already have in their organization. So that's a snapshot of the overall Asia responses. Let's just hone in a bit now on Japan in particular. Slightly different findings there, as you'd probably expect. So first of all, along with the rest of Asia, employers in Japan are pretty upbeat about the outlook for 2022. Certainly us as a recruitment agency, we share those sentiments after speaking to our customers across the course of the first quarter of 2022. There's no doubt a more positive sentiment in the market when it comes to growth and hiring. There's definitely no doubt at all more optimistic or more optimism in the market compared to the previous year, where 69% expected their business activity to increase. And you can see that on the screen there, that 69% is compared to 57% 12 months ago. There's also fewer hiring freezes, similar to what we said in Asia. And as a result, significant more employers expect to increase their permanent staff levels over the next 12 months. This sentiment reflects the strong rebound that the Japanese economy saw in the final months of 2021. However, we're not out of the woods yet. There is still the shadow of Omicron hanging over the Japanese economy. There's also other macro factors as well that could continue to pose significant challenges to businesses who are looking to recover over the course of the year. So we look at the percentage of respondents in Japan who are currently actively looking for a job. You can see there that it's actually gone up quite a bit in the last 12 months. So in the 2022 survey, 77% indicated that they were actively looking for a job. So that includes actively searching, but also open to opportunities. And that compares to 62% who indicated the same 12 months ago. So there is an increased hiring appetite. Well, the fact that there is an increased hiring appetite around the market from organizations will be welcome news to a lot of talent in the market that also is now eager to put feelers out to see what might be in the market, what opportunities might be available to them in the market. So Japan over the last 2 years has been fairly consistently one of the markets with the most active percentage of job seekers. We're only beaten by Malaysia. So 42% of respondents said that they were open to an opportunity, so at least open to opportunities. And that indicates that if the right opportunity was to come their way, they would be pretty open to hearing more about that and would probably not hesitate moving forward with that opportunity. Apologies. Employers will thus need to put equal focus on attraction and retention strategies in order to attract new talent, but also keeping existing employees feeling fulfilled in their jobs. Primary motivators for candidates looking out for new roles remain unchanged from last year, even though more people are prioritizing pay packages and putting less of an emphasis on career progression. Seeking new challenges is the top reason for candidates as to why they are currently looking out for new jobs. When we look at what motivated people to stay in their roles, it was salary packages, as well as the alignment of company values and culture. And this actually overtook work-life balance as the top factor this year. So given how important salaries are to employees, let's just take a closer look at compensation on this slide. So from our data, we can see that wages are trending up in Japan compared to last year, despite still being short of a full recovery that matches pre-pandemic levels. Only 1% of employers surveyed said that they expect salaries to actually decrease this year. So just 1% indicated that. It was actually 3% that indicated that last year. In 2021. Additionally, a huge 80% are planning to increase salaries. That was only 62% last year. So that's a really big increase in terms of who is expecting to increase salaries in 2022. So I'm sure that's a welcome result for everyone on the call today. The bulk of salary increases, though, are going to average 3%, as we indicated before when we were looking at the Asia survey results. So as I mentioned earlier, this is lower than China and Malaysia. Increments in those two countries expected to be, well, the average increments in those two countries expected to be somewhere between 3 and 6%. More employers also plan to give bonuses this year. So, as their companies generate more wealth, they want to share that wealth with the people that help to generate it. And as a result, 75% of the employers that responded to our survey indicated that they would be looking to pay out bonuses. And that was quite a sharp uplift from the 62% that indicated that last year. Interestingly, though, the salary expectation gap isn't as wide in Japan compared to markets like China and Malaysia. So even though China and Malaysia have indicated that they're going to pay, on average, higher salary increments, there's still a gap there between what they're willing to give and what employees are willing to or wanting to see. Even though Japan is looking to pay less of a salary increase, that is more in line with the expectation of what Japanese employees or Japan-based employees are looking for. All right, a big one not only in Japan, right across the world, in fact, but certainly in Japan, it's skill shortages, and it does remain a challenge in the Japan market. Employers in Japan continue to be the least confident in Asia when it comes to hiring the skilled talent that they need to effectively run their operations. When we asked for the reasons behind why this skill shortage might exist in their organization, 41% of employers said that they attributed it to higher compensation being offered elsewhere. So it's a bit of a kind of competition thing. Other factors, or secondary factors, were the lack of learning and development opportunities for staff. That was the top reason last year, actually, but not the top reason this year. And also that skills needed were too niche and very hard to source in this current market. So on the screen here, you can see that some of the hard and soft skills that employers value in candidates, technical skills, analytical skills, and project skills make up the top 3 hard skills in demand. And on the right there, the top 3 soft skills are, as usual, communication skills, number 1 there at 23% of employees said that was the most soft skill in demand, followed by problem solving, and then finally teamwork. A work-life balance was found to be one of the key factors that made people stay in their jobs. It was certainly a decisive factor when candidates or employees wanted to either leave their job or stay in their job. They thought a lot about what kind of work-life balance am I getting in this sort of post-pandemic world. In fact, it was one of the top 3 retention factors for employees. However, only 45% of respondents rated their work-life balance as good or very good, and that's the second lowest in the region. The only country that gave a higher response than that was actually respondents from Malaysia. 22% rated their work-life balance as poor or very poor, and concerningly for Japan, that's actually the highest response rate that we received across Asia, 22% poor or very poor. So to better retain top performers, particularly in the world that we work in now, where there are the tools and the technology and the examples of work-life balance becoming a reality for many, many organizations, employers do need to reassess their work policies and look to take pretty firm action on improving work-life balance at their companies if they not only want to attract talent, but just as importantly, if you want to retain the talent that you currently have. Right, let's just move over to some key industry insights that we've got for you as a result of the survey findings in 2022. In the interest of time, I could be here all day talking to you about the 20 specialisms that we work in. I've just pulled out three of the main ones. We're going to look at technology, life sciences, and engineering as well. But if you grab hold of the salary guide, we are going to email that to you Flick through it, you're going to see a pretty exhaustive list of industry insights right across the industries that we actively recruit for, and there's quite a lot. So let's take a look at technology. The technology sector is one where we will see rapidly strengthening demand for talent in 2022. That's not just in Japan, that's across Asia, and it's also across the entire world. The pandemic has really catapulted the world into a new age of technological revolution. This is also why we're launching Hays Technology with the goal of enabling our clients in Japan to close the skill gaps and shape tomorrow's tech-enabled world of work. If you are interested in speaking to one of our specialized consultants who operate in a very niche area of technology, please do reach out to me after the webinar, and I can put you in touch with one of them who would be more than happy to have a conversation with you about how they might be able to service or help you with your demands. So over the course of 2021, we've seen digital transformation massively accelerate across public and private spheres. Commitment at a government level has reinvigorated investment across various sectors. And it was quite refreshing actually over the course of the last 12 months to see more rhetoric or more narrative coming out of the government around the need to digitalize in Japan. There is going to be a stronger focus on data and how it enhances business intelligence, thus thrusting roles within areas like digital analytics, DevOps, and software engineering out into the spotlight. Also primed to see a similar meteoric rise is cybersecurity sectors, or the cybersecurity sector, where businesses will focus on strengthening defenses and security policies to ensure regulatory compliance as well as maintain customer trust. We saw only, 1 or 2 months ago, some significant businesses in Japan had to close their businesses down for days as they grappled with consistent and fierce cybersecurity attacks. So given the large volume of jobs anticipated in a traditionally talent-short market, highly technically skilled candidates can expect multiple offers and, to be honest, pretty generous compensation packages as well as counter offers as well. All right, well, despite the pandemic, or probably more accurately, because of the pandemic, the life sciences sector has gone from strength to strength in 2022. That's expected to gain greater momentum as public and private investment continue to pour into this sector. With the battle against the pandemic ongoing, focus is, of course, going to be on new products within, obviously, vaccines and diagnostics, which means businesses will double down on innovation and research and development. Something that's fairly interesting actually to note is that within the pharmaceutical industry, the shortage of candidates has resulted in companies actually relaxing their requirement to an extent in order to widen out the talent pool that they can obtain talent from. And this is something that is not traditionally seen to be done in the pharmaceutical or the life sciences sector. Aside from technical roles, commercial roles, so sales and marketing in life sciences that involve strategy and business development and marketing are also on the rise in the life sciences sector as businesses aim to capitalize on that economic growth in 2022. They want to cut through the noise, cut through the competitors, and get a very hungry, motivated, talented sales force out there selling their products and generating revenue. However, candidates in this industry, they're very typically conservative, and over the last year, they've demonstrated a strong resistance to exploring new roles. This might improve over the coming months as the market stabilizes somewhat, but employers might want to reassess their talent attraction strategies and maybe increase investment in recruitment marketing to better attract their candidates. Finally, let's just take a look at the engineering sector. So this is engineering and manufacturing, not technology engineering, but manufacturing engineering. So with the pandemic having induced supply constraints across industries, Japan's industrial sector took a pretty hard hit last year, particularly the automotive sector, for example. That's going to continue to be quite a challenging sector across the next 6 to 12 months. Still, the businesses that we spoke to were fairly optimistic about a rebound led by, in fact, surprisingly to me, the automotive sector. We're going to see more roles being generated in this space at a regional scope, as well as an increase in roles in the semiconductor and industrial robot industries. And this is pretty much a result of 5G adoption picking up speed this year. Also in the spotlight is the renewable energy industry, which is expected to ramp up hiring as companies aim to meet the nation's environmental goals. Another key trend in the sector is how businesses are quickly adapting to new digitally enabled or to a new digitally enabled world of work. Companies are beginning to integrate data and intelligence technology to improve their practices and processes in order to meet sustainability, performance, and operational excellence goals. And as such, they're going to begin or focus more on hiring technically strong candidates, but who are also digitally savvy as well. That's the highlights from our 3 key industries: technology, life sciences, engineering. As I said, when you get the report sent to you, you can flick through it and find your industry if we didn't cover it today, and you'll find a lot more information in there around the findings. What I'm going to do now is to move on to recommendations. We do this every year. We like to take a look at the data, all the raw data, and then we like to put together some recommendations, not only for employers, but also employees, candidates, job seekers, based on what we are seeing from the results of the data that we've collected for this survey. So you see here some recommendations. There's 4 here for employers. I'm just going to go through each one and try and flesh it out a little bit for you. So the first one here is, and this is quite critical, it's critical for employers to manage the salary expectation gaps, especially since a strong priority for 2022 is to increase permanent headcount to focus on growth. So this means that talent attraction and retention strategies are going to be of pretty utmost importance this year. Across Asia, employees are expecting higher compensation. Even though in Japan it wasn't as much as in Malaysia and China, they are expecting a salary increase. But the reality is the most will see their salary increments falling short of the expectations they do have. That's usually the way. One way to manage this is to compensate employees in other ways, such as looking at their bonus structures or maybe looking at non-financial benefits as well. Promotional or skills development opportunities or even flexible working options could really help to bridge this gap. The second recommendation here is to invest in recruitment marketing. Of course, the recruitment agency is going to say that, but I have to stress, if you're going to cut through the noise, cut through the competition, you're really going to have to look at this as a way of adding to your arsenal this year. We are in for a competitive market, there's no doubt about that this year. And while compensation is clearly important, another factor that will prove to be critical to attracting high caliber talent is a strong employer brand. Consider also increasing investment in flexible recruitment solutions to supplement your existing workforce. Flexible recruitment or short-term recruitment, non-permanent recruitment does provide excellent solutions to companies who are looking to expand rapidly, but can't quite, for whatever reason, make a move on permanent headcount. Some advantages, some other advantages to flexible recruitment, aside from the labor cost savings, is that increased flexibility in talent pipeline planning as well. Third, invest in your employee skills development. Employers have the clearest view on which skills are required within their business. And so there's no one better placed to help develop a structured upskilling or reskilling program. This could involve investing in additional education or qualification programs, perhaps, maybe some formal mentoring structures being put in place, or creating dedicated pathways for growth for your employees. Given that career progression is one of the top reasons people are looking for new jobs or choosing to stay in their current jobs, enabling employees to develop their skills could be an effective employee retention attraction tool. Maybe it will mean that you don't need to take a look at financial compensation as a result. Finally, you should work on improving work-life balance in your organization, particularly in this new way of working where companies have shown that it is possible. This means that you might need to embrace new hybrid work models, develop policies that offer better work flexibility, as well as supporting employee mental health and well-being. It is a bit of a project when you do look at changing the flexibility requirements of your organization. It's not as simple as just giving people a laptop and saying you can work from home. There is a people and culture project that needs to go alongside it. But after all, work-life balance and flexible working options are two of the top 5 reasons that people are happy or choose to stay with their current employer. So after rolling out these policies, make sure that you do work on educating employees on all the options that are available to them. You'd be surprised how many organizations put in a lot of time, effort, resource into moving their business into a hybrid working model, but then don't communicate it out to the employees effectively. And finally, our recommendations for employees there. First of all, find the right window to make your move. Develop competence in the right areas. Know what employees are looking for. We talked before about recommendations for employers around upskilling their workforce, but it is a two-way street. Employees also have to take control of their own career development. They need to ensure that they make themselves aware of what opportunities are available for them within their organization. And if they're not happy with that, they need to then look outside and think, okay, what opportunities are available for me in other areas? Are they government-sponsored grants that I can take a look at that will help me to upskill in an area that I think is going to be suitable? And finally, negotiate for non-financial benefits to make up for the salary expectation gap. We can see from the data that we collected in the survey, there is going to be a mismatch in terms of what candidates are looking for in their salary increases against what employees are looking to give. And if you can't bridge that gap, you might think about talking to your employer around what are some of the non-financial benefits that you might be able to explore or acquire to help bridge that expectation gap. So that brings us to the end of the findings of the salary guide. I'm now going to be taking questions. So I'm just going to open up the question dashboard here. So on the right of your panel, you should see a bit of an area there that will allow you to type in questions. And I'm just opening it up as we speak. So I'm just going to give you a couple of moments to explore that question panel in a bit more detail and then submit any questions you might have. Someone's already put one in here. Someone's asked, will the recording be made available later? And yes, it will be. We are recording this session. As I mentioned at the start of the presentation, a copy of the recording as well as a soft copy of the salary guide will be sent out to everyone who has participated or joined the webinar today. So I'm just going to give a bit more time. Okay, there's just a few questions coming in now. Just give it a bit longer to give people a chance to ask their questions. So there's a trend in some questions coming through. So I might, if I don't specifically read out your question, I'm going to try and group some of them together just in the interest of time. So a couple of people have mentioned I work in the automotive sector. I work in the pharmaceutical sector. What advice do you have for me if I'm looking to change careers into a field that I have no previous professional experience in? What advice would you give me? And it's a good question. This is one that comes up every day with our consultants. Every time we meet a candidate, it's likely that they do have ambitions or aspirations to try something new, maybe pursue a passion project. And in fact, during the pandemic, that's become more and more of a question that we are asked as recruiters, because people have been spending lots of time at home thinking about their future, thinking about their career, and maybe thinking about the fact that they might want to spend some time on some passion projects, for instance. And of course, one of the issues that crops up is, well, I've just spent the last 10, 15, 20 years in a particular sector, a particular function, and I don't think I've got the skill set to do anything else, even though I've really got a desire to. So the answer to that is not straightforward. It's not a one-size-fits-all answer, unfortunately. It depends on what your ambition is. Of course, if you wanted to go into a field that is maybe less technically related, so maybe a sales field, you might find that that's going to be more possible. You might find that prospective employers, or companies are more interested in talking to you about that. You might have to accept that initially you will probably be looking at dropping down a few rungs in the hierarchical structure, or maybe even taking a bit of a cut in your salary. But when it comes to sales roles, for instance, if you know, by the time you build out your network and you start to immerse yourself in your market, you'll find that the decrease in your salary will be temporary, and it won't take you very long to win that back again. I think if you've got a desire to move into a more technical, specialized area where maybe certain qualifications are required, or certain education at all or experience is required, that's going to be a little bit more difficult. Some of the options that might be available to you, you might want to try and get exposure to that field now while you're doing your current role. Perhaps in your current organization, there is a team that does do that job that you're particularly interested in. And you might start forming some relationships with people in that team to see if you can spend maybe some time helping them, being exposed to what they do, so you can start picking up some experience there. Maybe even on your days off, you might work out a deal or a solution where you go and spend some time in that team. So you're starting to not only gather some experience, but more importantly, you're starting to put some feelers out there and get a bit of a network going, and that might lead you to eventually move permanently into that field. If that's not possible, you might then consider to invest in your own development in your spare time, as we mentioned before. So you can take a look at what opportunities are available to you in terms of maybe some part-time study, maybe some vocational courses that you can do in your time off. And over the course of the next few months, next few years, you might be able to develop that requirement or that skill set that will allow you to then permanently move into the area that you desire to work in. But I think the advice that we give to people, if you are choosing to do something completely different to what you have done, you probably do need to just set that expectation that you might have to just reduce your expectations on your compensation or even your level in the organization, maybe temporarily only, until you're able to get yourself into that role. You do have to be aware, though, that many employers do have concerns when they interview someone who's quite experienced, who is willing to drop down to a more junior role. They will want to question, well, why is that? What are the aspirations for that? That's not to say it never happens, but you do need to be prepared to be able to articulately explain to any future organizations why you're looking to make that change.
I don't have an answer for that.
Sorry.
Is there something else I can do?
My Apple Watch is trying to help out with the answering of the questions. There's a few questions here just on salary increments. Just to kind of pull it all together, is generally asking what kind of increment can I expect if I stay in my current firm? So not necessarily looking to move companies, but if I'm going to speak to my boss about an increment, what kind of increment do you at Hays see in the market? Again, not to sound too wishy-washy, but again, it isn't a one-size-fits-all answer to this question. What I would say, though, like most things, if you don't prepare, then you're going to fail. So before you go into any salary negotiation, I think it's critical that you do sit down and thoroughly prepare for why you're having this discussion. You don't want to sit down in front of your manager and say, I want a salary increase simply because I haven't had one in a couple of years, or I feel like I deserve it, or my friend who works in a similar job just got a salary increase, therefore I think I should. You really want to sit down. Well, first of all, you really want to make sure you know what is your worth in the market. Even though you're not necessarily looking to change organizations, you want to kind of figure out, well, with my skill set and my experience, where would other companies position me in terms of what they're prepared to pay me? And you can do that. You can go and speak to recruitment agencies and get a feel for where they think, with their experience in the market, they would position you in terms of a salary increase. So that will give you a bit of a ballpark figure as to where you might be positioning yourself. Then you would go and speak to your manager and say, listen, I've been doing some research and I think I'm a little bit underpaid here given where I am now in terms of my value to the organization. And as a result of that, I want to have a conversation with you about taking a look at my package and increasing it. Typically in Japan, we see, as we mentioned in the survey, we do see that people who stay within their organizations do tend to receive an increment, whether it's annual or every 2 years, of about 3 to 6%, probably more on the sort of 3 to 4 side, but up to 6%. So that might give you a bit of an idea about where you might position the start of your conversation, and then see where you get to in the end. But certainly I would go in there with preparation done, a really clear understanding as to what you're looking for and why. Why do you think that's a reflection on what value you are bringing to your organization? Someone's asked here, do Hays offer temporary employment placement? And we do, yeah, we do permanent and non-permanent recruitment. So you just need to reach out to us, give us a bit of an idea about what your background is. We're very strong in IT, non-permanent recruitment. We're also very strong in other functions as well, such as accounting, finance, sales and marketing, office professionals, administration, that sort of thing as well. But technology is certainly one of our biggest non-permanent specializations at Hays. There's another question that kind of relates to changing career. Someone has said here, at Hays, how do you go about recruiting recruiters? And just similar to you guys, actually, we have a multi-pronged attraction strategy. We obviously like to look at experienced recruiters, but we also do invest heavily in developing our own talent. And this person here who's asked this question has specifically said that I don't have recruitment experience, and that's not normally a problem. We do have an industry-leading training and development program for our associate recruiters. So if you are interested in that, drop me an email and I can put you in touch with our internal recruitment team who can guide you through that process. There's quite a lot of questions coming through around language requirements. Lots of people asking, do I need to speak Japanese in order to get a job in Japan or to move jobs in Japan? Yeah, so that depends really. Multinational companies, they're usually more willing to hire people that are not Japanese speakers, or that have a strong grasp on the Japanese language there. But multinational corporations can do that. They're usually more concerned about the skills that you can bring to the business, and that's because they will usually have an abundance of Japanese speakers in the business as well. Obviously, it's going to depend on the type of role that you do. If your role is client facing and those clients tend to be either Japanese or monolingual, then of course the Japanese language is going to be probably the most critical factor when they look to hire. But if it's not a client-facing role, perhaps it's a technology role. Of course, at Hays we do place non-Japanese speakers into roles all the time. It's probably less so the case in smaller organizations where a lot of people who work in those businesses, particularly domestic businesses, might be either monolingual or they don't feel like they've got a strength in depth in English speakers, and therefore when they come to us and ask us for talent, one of the requirements they do look for is native Japanese speaking, or certainly a strong grasp on conversational level Japanese. But I think to sum up the answer to your question, if you don't speak Japanese and you are looking for an opportunity in Japan, we certainly do place people like you into roles all the time. There's another question here just around the current situation with regards to foreigners in Japan. Someone here has said, can foreigners now work in Japan? I'm sure that's not what you meant, but just to clarify, foreigners have always been able to work in Japan during the pandemic. What couldn't happen is firms couldn't issue new visas. So the government wasn't issuing new visas. So if you were a foreigner in Japan, you're fine to move around, change jobs, work, whatever. If you were outside Japan, then you would be caught up in the border restrictions that were put in place to help prevent the spread of COVID-19. That has eased somewhat. I don't know if you've checked news websites recently, but from March the 1st, there was a considerable change in the position from the Japanese government around letting foreigners come into Japan. It's not a kind of complete open door, let's get everyone in. There are caps and there are restrictions, and it's not, you have to be sponsored by your organization. But certainly the ability to get into Japan now, if you have a job offer, is there. So if you have been looking to try and get yourself into the country and take on a role, my advice to you would be to have another go. And just make sure you keep yourself abreast though on the requirements that's in place. They do change and they can be quite stringent. Your employer does have to do certain things to get you into the country, so just make sure that you're on top of that. But certainly there's more the ability to get into Japan now is greater than 2 months ago. There's a question here around hybrid working in Japan. We talked about this a lot during the presentation. And people talking about hybrid, are firms in Japan really offering hybrid opportunities or flexible working opportunities? This is pretty much a real passionate project of mine. We are at Hays completely not only hybrid, we do offer the opportunity to work completely from home if you do choose. I think one thing that the COVID has done for the economy, obviously it did a lot of damage, of course, but it did make Japan focus on pushing the economy into the world of digitalization at a speed that Japan has never seen before. We see in corporates and we see it in the government sector as well. Many companies are beginning to embrace the concept now of hybrid working. There's many studies that's been released. I'm sure many people have seen it over the last 12 months that have dispelled the fears that letting people work from home or letting people choose a hybrid option would impact productivity. I think that is now a fear that has been largely subsided in people's minds. There's enough evidence to support that. Not only does it not decrease productivity, it actually enhances productivity. Not only productivity, it also enhances engagement in the organization as well. That's not to say that all companies can do it. There is costs involved in setting your business up to be able to be hybrid or any degree of flexibility. Not everyone's going to have the resources or the investment to do that. Clearly, multinationals are going to have a bit more of a resource availability to them to be able to drive that through. That's not to say that domestic or smaller companies don't do it. Of course, I know many organizations in Japan who would consider themselves to be smaller companies have embraced the world of hybrid working or full flexibility. But I would say that when it's not, I wouldn't say the majority of companies in Japan are doing it at the moment. I think over the course of the next 12 months, you're going to see a rapid pickup on the ability to offer flexible working. But I would say certainly now we are seeing that trend definitely in multinationals and to a lesser extent in SMEs as well. Someone's asked a question here. Why is Japanese wage increases not as prominent as in other countries, particularly the US, when the cost of living in those countries is just as high? And I think, this is a really topical subject at the moment in Japan. Prime Minister Kishida has been quite passionate about trying to push through higher wage inflation in Japan. Certainly when he ran for the post last September, I think it was, a big part of his campaign was on the back of, trying to convince companies to pay their employees more money in terms of wages. There's no doubt that Japan has not seen the kind of wage inflation that we've seen across the rest of the world. And that's not just recently. I think, if you look over the last 2 or 3 decades, Japan has not been a country that has experienced large percentages of wage inflation. And I think what differentiates Japan from most other countries is that Japan hasn't experienced the same levels of inflation, general inflation, economic inflation that other companies have. And in fact, if you take a look at the last 2 or 3 decades, Japan has been in somewhat a deflationary environment. And when you've got that as an economic backdrop, it becomes quite difficult to convince corporations to pay more money out in wages if the cost of goods is not increasing, and in fact, in some cases decreasing. Companies are less likely going to be interested in discussions around wage increases. What I would say is I think that's changing, certainly in 2022. Japan doesn't seem to be immune to inflation this year. I think what's happening, obviously, as a result of COVID, but also some of the stuff that we're seeing around the world right now is exposing Japan to that inflation. That's particularly with regards to commodities like fuel, oil, as well as food. So you're starting to see those prices go up now. And I think that's going to mean that companies are going to be under more pressure to increase wages as a result. So you might start to see some wage inflation coming in over the next few months or the next few years. In fact, if you think about some of the big automotive companies in Japan, Toyota 2 or 3 weeks ago announced that they had agreed with the unions that they would provide the level of salary increase that they were asking for. Nissan and Honda have followed suit. I think Honda was a bit earlier actually, but they're all on the same page. I personally, I'm not an economist, I don't think you'll see a large scale increase that's going to be on the level that Kishida is pushing for, that kind of 3%. But I think there's no doubt in most people's minds that this year you're going to see a higher level of wage inflation than we have done in previous years in Japan. So I think that's all we've got time for today. We're over time actually, so I'm going to end the session there. As I mentioned to you, we have got quite a few questions. We couldn't get through them all. However, I am going to take a look at them in further detail after the session today. If I need to reach out to any of my colleagues to help answer the questions, I'll certainly do that, and I'll make sure we get back to you over the next couple of days with a response. But as far as the presentation and the webinar goes today, that does conclude and that does wrap it up. The webinar has been recorded, as I mentioned to you at the start of the conversation, and someone did ask that question. It has been recorded, so we'll make sure that we get that over to you so you can watch it again if you feel the need to in your own time. On top of that, you are going to receive a soft copy of the guide within the next day. You can also scan the QR code as well here on this page to not only get a copy of the salary guide, but also, sorry, I don't know what's happened there. Let me just try and, yep. These QR codes will give you access to a number of the white papers that we have released over the course of the last year. Some good stuff there. So the salary guide is included in that, but there's also the changing face of life sciences in Asia, which is a really detailed white paper report that we put together, and also the DNA of the future workplace and our top 10 talent trends for Japan for 2022. So if you've got your phones handy, feel free to scan those QR codes. If you're having problems with it, then reach out to us and we can send you soft copy links to access those guides. And as I said to you earlier, you'll get an email in the next day that will have a copy of the soft copy of today's 2022 salary guide report. Any more information that you have around salary benchmarking in Japan or across Asia, please feel free to visit our website. That's hays.co.jp. The links on there are really easy to navigate. There's a salary guide section there. Or of course, you can get in touch with the Hays office. You can either email me or you can reach out to the Hays office directly. And one of our specialized recruiters or consultants will be happy to link up with you and have more discussion with you as well. So thanks very much for joining the webinar today. It's been greatly appreciated. If you could just take a moment to fill out a survey. Once I end the webinar, you will get a link to a survey. We really like to see feedback on what you felt about the content or the information that was in today's salary guide. So please take a moment just to fill that out. It won't take very long, 15, 20 seconds. But other than that, thank you very much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your week. And I hope that you enjoy the cherry blossom season over the next couple of weeks. Thank you very much, everyone. Please enjoy your day. Goodbye.